Hello, and welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. My name is John Preposterous Ryan. You're very welcome. Hello. My name is John Preposterous Ryan. You're watching Broadsheet on the Telly. Thank you very much for joining us. Special hello to all Broadsheet commenters and readers and even the trolls and all the people in the chat pit. If there's anybody in there. If you have any questions you want to ask us during the show, you can just ask us in the chat pit. And I think Vanessa is going to be monitoring the chat pit for us. So to introduce our panel tonight, I'd like to introduce Marcel Kruger, who is in Dundalk, but German-born, Cologne-born. Martin McMahon, blogger and podcaster from Dublin. His podcast, The Echo Chamber, is excellent, and we'll be plugging it a bit later. Olga Cronin from The Sheet, who's just come in from a lengthy shift in town. That's a work shift. And Vanessa Foran, who's got the broadsheet on the Telly logo behind her. We've a lot to talk about, sort of Catalonia and conspiracy theories, but I want to get talk first, if I can. Sorry, hello everybody, by the way. Marcel, sorry, am I hearing myself back?
It's all good.
Yeah, for a few minutes. It's finished now. Yeah, I think it's good now. Yeah.
That's earphones, new earphones to make it sort of more professional, but anyway, so a lot to talk about tonight, but I just wanted to talk about Michael Colgan and the story about part of the Me Too, the hashtag Me Too thing, I imagine, I guess. But last Friday, Grace Dias, who had worked with Michael Colgan, wrote a blog post about her experiences working with him. This is followed by another couple of women over the weekend adding to that. The Sunday Times ran a story, and Mail on Sunday also ran a story without naming Michael Colgan. And since then, 3 other women have added their testimonies to Grace Dias' original testimony regarding her problem with working with Michael Colgan. Now, the Gate Theatre is state subsidised to the tune of about $800,000 a year, of which
pays his pension.
Yeah, of which Michael Colgan, who's now left, was on, I think, around 250,000. But so there is a public interest part to this, I think. I mean, I'd like to think so. I mean, we've covered the story, but nobody else has, apart from the Sunday Times and Mail on Sunday. Vanessa, it shows the power of Michael Colgan that he hasn't been named by RTE or anybody, or nothing has been discussed about this.
Well, it's certainly very obvious that they don't want to name him. You know, if it's out there, the man has been named and shamed and mortified. Right, you know, why wouldn't they name them? Are they pretending they don't know him?
Well, I mean, they're just not covering the story at all.
No. But there was brief mention, but, you know, it was like a brush over. It was so phony, really. But the thing is, it's clear they're not discussing anything to do with him because he is a friend, he is involved there, he has connections there. You know, somebody's used the word power. He's got power. You know, it's clear that there's like, you know, a circle around him that he hasn't made the national news. I mean, this is news. Report the effing news, lads.
Well, Olga,
They did. Just to say, they haven't named him, but they did report on the statement. So the Gate released a statement tonight this afternoon, saying that anyone who worked in the Gate or works in the Gate who wishes to raise any concerns about behaviour to come forward, and they're going to set up are going to appoint someone to look into the investigations, and they've set up an confidential email, but they have reported that, because obviously, there's no problem with that. But I'm just to say that they have reported that, but that's all they have reported.
But given the organisation gets such a significant sum, I'm sure at some point they were required to have a policy to do, a HR policy to do with, to manage and mention, harassment or difficulties or even whistleblowing, Like what I find about the stories that are coming out is that everyone was complicit in this behaviour, that new people would come in and they'd be prepared. Well, you'd be able to deal with them.
Yeah. That's just
that's complicit behaviour. That's aiding and abetting, is that you'd hear on LA Law or something like that.
Well, it would seem that he remarkable.
They tolerated it.
Yeah, but it would seem that it was remarkable.
Marcel, I wanted to ask you just about this method of exposing people through, just unfiltered out there on Twitter or on blog posts, and the allegations are made, and I suppose the accumulation of them in respect to Michael Colgan makes the case very difficult for the Gate. But in terms of the actual the method of these kind of exposures, does it make you feel comfortable or not, Marcel? Do you believe it's like a witch hunt?
No, because there are no witches involved. So obviously it's not a witch hunt. I think, and I was just thinking about this, that it started like with Hollywood, and with everything is coming from, and it seems, obviously I'm not saying that these things could not happen in like a corporate environment, because Vanessa was just mentioning HR there right now, but it feels to me like we've seen all the allegations coming from Hollywood, and now we've got this case here with the Gate Theatre, which is a well-known institution, and it feels like that in these areas, in the creative areas, like the boundaries are way more blurry, it seems, than maybe when we have like a framework of you work in a company and you get introduced to the HR person, or who to write to, who to call to, and maybe that wasn't the case here, and if that's not the case, if the people would not have a person to go to and now feel empowered by the Me Too hashtag or the campaign you were mentioning, John, I don't have any issue with them going out and venting. If it happened, it has happened. So,
Martin, sorry, Marcel.
Yeah,
Martin, did you want to?
Well, there's two sides to me on this one, John. There is using the court system, and if you name somebody publicly, you blow your chance on the courts, or you may blow your chance on the courts. And then there's the other side of me that says, from the victim's point of view, it's not about courts, it's about justice. And if you name somebody publicly, you are actually subverting the justice system. It's not illegal to do it, you can do it, but you are then putting the burden of proof on the perpetrator or the alleged perpetrator to prove you wrong. And to me, that's kind of sweet. That's the way to go.
Okay.
I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like there to be guidance on how to go about these things at all. I mean, everything that's been reported is historic, and the stories that are happening in a workplace, and they should be dealt with within the workplace. Not so much that if something happened, you go to court and you seek remedy that way. But I mean, if we're going back to the Gate, like all that behaviour should have been dealt with a long time ago. I mean, he was there for a long, long time. But then, like Martin, like not to contradict you, Martin, but to kind of say, to start coming up with a way, that's the way to go. I think, first of all, everything has to come out. The truth has to come out. And if this was tolerated for so long, and it seems to me it's going to end up in double digits, the amount of stories that are, the different people that are going to come out with a different story. You know, surely it must have been known outside the four walls of the gate, like the Arts Council or the Department of Arts, Gaeltacht, and etc., 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 that this guy needed management or women. I mean, they didn't get it. There's no way this was a secret until Grace Dias wrote that blog, or, you know, there's no way this was a secret. I don't believe that also, for a second.
I think it's one of the most remarkable things is that Annette Clancy, who wrote her post, so basically Annette Clancy wrote a post on Facebook on the 18th of October, so that was just a week before Grace, or a bit longer, and basically she recounted how in the early 1990s she went for a job interview. She was working for the Gate, she went for a job interview, and like for another position, or else it was the Dublin Theatre Festival, one or the other, and basically she excuse me, he apparently made this lewd remark about her being a massage therapist.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So the fact that she took a case, and this was part of her case, and there was a settlement in the early 1990s, it does seem remarkable that there doesn't seem to have been any kind of
or even a risk plan to deal with it, because if they paid out once, they have to provide for it again.
Yeah. So, but also, so that's the 1990s. He was in the Gate for 33 years, so he must have started there in 1983. Is that right? So, like, you know, so what happened then after that settlement? Was it a case of okay, Michael, just, you know, tone it down, or, you know, you can't say this, or was there nothing said, or what happened? You know?
Yeah.
Well, you would have thought the board at some point would have addressed it at board level.
Well, you would imagine so, right? A settlement. I don't see how else that would be.
You know, I mean, it would have all been discussed at board at more than one occasion. Now, I know the man is a director of the board, and, you know, traditionally, if you are compromised in a board matter, and in a governance matter, you take leave of the room, and it's recorded in the minutes. So and so left at the discussion happened, and there's recorded when they return back in. So it had to have. It had to have been mentioned in board minutes at some point along the way there in the 30-odd years the man was there. If not, then it's not just Michael Colgan that's the tyrant, or, you know, the issue. Yeah. There's a whole lot of them, because they were all complicit if they knew, and they subjected women.
I used to see Michael Colgan. I mean, I've maybe been in his company about 5 times or so. I mean, I think we've all had our moments, but I never met him when he wasn't boorish. It always occurred to me, it was like, wow, how does this guy just keep his job? And he's just,
really?
Well, I didn't mean it was inappropriate behavior or anything. He was so bitchy, you know, so nastily bitchy. He'd say things that would really hurt. Well, he did, yeah, he certainly said that to me, but I'd also say it to other people. He would just find a weakness in the people around him. But I was wondering, you know, that sort of personality does thrive in Ireland, because we are kind of shy and sort of, you know, we're withdrawn, and we think confident people have some sort of wizardry, sorcery, or something. You know, and they kind of bully their way, you know, to people just don't speak out against them, you know. I certainly so I never met him when he wasn't boorish, and then he wins OBEs and things, and you kind of wonder, what the hell?
Is that what the medal is? I saw a medal on his chest. Is that what the medal is, an OBE?
No, that was the Community Games medal from this. No, that was his OBE. Yeah, this is OBE for.
Do you know, I have a Community Games medal.
Running a state-subsidised theatre in Dublin is pretty impressive.
I tell you, he did a nice job for all that time, didn't he?
Yeah, great number, I think. But
nice place to work.
I think the point was, he was either very successful at what he did. I mean, they were obviously very happy with how he was performing. I mean, I guess bringing Ralph Fiennes and people like that to Dublin was something they valued on the board, maybe.
Do you know what else? It's when the Weinstein story broke there. I remember it was around the time of the budget as well. So I was kind of watching two things or three things. But one thing that occurred to me about the Weinstein stories coming out was I often wonder what great actors missed out, or what great performances we missed out on going to one of the Weinstein movies. Was there somebody else that was better, but because they didn't concede to his requirements or, you know, his demands, did they lose out? And I often wonder, you know, what great actors we have never been given the pleasure of experience, what great talents have been just left by the wayside because they wouldn't go along with the thing. So I wonder what great playwrights, what great stories, what great performances has a funded theatre like the Gate missed out on. And its audience, the audience have paid in, and they're going to see a play and there's an actor in it, and, you know, and it's good and it's happy and everyone. And then you know, now to think about, was there somebody that would have been better? Well, and we would have got better value for money. I don't know. I know I'm kind of thinking way outside the park.
I think Colgan had got together a kind of a group, like Peter O'Brien would do the costumes, and so, Alan Stanford would direct, perhaps play the lead. You know, it seemed for the last 20 years it was run like that. This, you know, kind of
Colgan, circle of friends.
Well, sort of a coterie of very talented people who were, you know, just often used, you know, continuously rather than bringing in a lot of new talent. But just moving away from that, there's
like RT.
There's two stories. The Colgan story is not the Irish Weinstein. The Irish Weinstein concerns somebody else entirely different, and that is a more serious charge of rape. This is not. Allegations against Michael Colgan range from, you know, just being verbally condescending.
He was a bad boss. He was a bad boss. He was an ugly boss. He, you know, rape is an entirely different thing, you know.
But there are also more serious allegations.
But one of the stories about Colgan is about him smacking someone.
Well,
I think that's atrocious. That shouldn't happen in the workplace. He should have been suspended from the workplace the moment that happened, regardless.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's among the claims. Just moving on, that there is another. This not another one, but the Irish Weinstein is the person that Judge Ciara Kelly tweeted about.
Oh yes.
So this is more serious. This is somebody who is accused of raping somebody 40 years ago that Judge Ciara Kelly has met, and she coincidentally had her own experiences with this man, and then she subsequently discovered a lot of other experiences. Women had a lot of other experiences with unpleasant experiences with this guy. Where that'll go, I'm not too sure. I'll get to.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we only know what she's tweeted, and obviously, when you read the tweets, there's a million questions, you know, obviously. But she says that she put this out in the hope that others will come forward, and obviously, you know, there's a lot of people kind of arguing that it was incorrect because, you know, there's a guessing game going on, and
no. There was used jigsaw identification. I mean, I certainly knew who it was. I mean, I think everybody we knew who it was pretty quickly in terms of how she identified that person. So, but I also think that there was a criticism about the fact that he had done something to his wife, and revealing that it subjects the wife scrutiny, you know, to privacy, lack of privacy, all that. But I don't know where this is going to end with this other man, with this other person. I mean, as regards to the Colgan thing, if more people come forward, will RTE cover this story? Will anybody discuss it on air?
I think they will eventually.
They have to. They have to.
Will somebody in the Dáil raise it?
Probably.
Well, I think there'd certainly be Parliament. There'd be here on it. You know, I mean, they gave the organisation exceptional sums of money, so you know they had to oblige various workplace regulations at the very least. With that, you know, to if you accept these grants, you know, you are by obligation obliged to have all these regulations observed in your workplace, you know. So imagine, I can't see anyone now in the current government, you know, going back and asking the gate to give back money. But I certainly, and at the same time now he's gone, so it's probably unfair to penalise them. But as I said earlier at the top of the show, John, like, there's a huge number of people complicit in this behaviour. Like, if that's the story about him slapping someone on the stage, he should have been suspended from the premises there and then. That's what would have happened in any other workplace. You know, the cursing and the shouting and the roaring, so we've all had bosses like that. Sure, I'm like that, you know. But
I think structure in any organisation means that people will stay quiet for the sake of their jobs. We have to take that into consideration. There may be many people who would like to speak up, but they're in a precarious position with their employment. They speak up, not only are they ruined in the job they're in, they're probably ruined in the industry they're in.
I think that's fair. I think that's really, really very, very fair and very important. It's sad, but it's true. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Right.
You just have a reputation of a troublemaker in that scene, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And every organisation becomes dysfunctional over time. If you're at a level where you will dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and you don't go with the consensus opinion, the way to move you on is to move you up and sideways, and then replace you with somebody who will be complacent. And once you've sold out once, you're finished. You have to sell out every time. So every organisation ends up dysfunctional over time. Every organisation.
There was something that Michael Colgan seemed kind of untouchable. He just got incredible press from all the papers. You know.
But you know, the only time I've ever heard him speak, John, all right, was he was on the Late Late Show with Michael Gambon. And they were like two old buddies swapping stories about their moms, and they're like as if they were at school together and they've been best friends all their lives. And one is going to, oh, tell them the story about this, and tell them the story. Oh, do you remember the time? We said, oh, no, you tell them. It was all this, you know. What do Michael Gambon has to say? I mean, we're talking.
Well, I have to say,
an actor now.
Well, they love him. Like John Hurt loved him. Michael Ray Fiennes, Jeremy Irons. They all, like, you know, guys want to be with him. Some certain type of men want to be with him anyway. I mean, I don't know what that.
I'd like to watch Kevin Spacey too. I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, does it?
Does he love Michael Colgan as well?
Potentially.
No. Bizarrely, I have a Kevin Spacey story too.
Go on, tell us. Can you tell us?
Yeah, no. Well, no, it doesn't. It sort of fizzles out a bit, but only in retrospect do I look back and think, oh God.
Did he touch your knee, John?
No. I was working in the Sunday Times and in the culture section, and he was over filming Ordinary Decent Criminal with about
the General.
Yeah, with Colin Farrell and all the.
I've seen it.
Yeah, he was briefly, I think. And oh yeah, we did the Fringe Awards, the Young Student Awards. We sponsored them, and I think it's Liam Stebbing, who now is with the Irish Times. Do you know Liam? He is somebody anyway. Worked on the set anyway. So we faxed to Kevin Spacey. Would he give out the awards? Thinking, of course, he wouldn't, and got a fax back saying, no, he'd be there at 10 p.m. It was in Reinhardt's nightclub. He'd be there at 10 p.m. So I was waiting outside, and like, you remember Jimmy Rabbit in the Commitments, waiting for the, you know, the soul guy to turn up that never showed. And you know, everybody was in the Reynards, you know, it was like
waiting on this superstar to
they
arrive.
didn't know. They didn't know. They thought the special guest was Twink or something. You know? So, but he shows up. I have to say, he shows up with a really young lad. And at the time, I just assumed he was straight, but of course he loved it there. He was, he had a fantastic night.
He's in his element.
Well, I hope there's no, I hope there's no incidents that, you know, that are recorded from that evening.
Oh gosh! Oh yeah.
A lot of young actors and young, anyway.
Yeah, when you look back, you see, oh God, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I imagine it's the same with the Tom Humphreys thing. People look back and they think about the columns he wrote about underage camogie and stuff.
Well, I went up to him throughout the night, because he was there for like 5 hours. I said, listen, I'm so grateful that you come down here, you know, not knowing that like this is in his element anyway. You know, is there much just more to say about the Colgan thing vis-a-vis what the Irish Times? I mean,
I would just like to say I was very disappointed. Marion didn't say anything about it. Yeah, I am, because, like, you know, my earliest memory of Marion was this big hoo-ha on the Late Late for women, and, you know, Nell and all, you know, all the sort of the contraceptive trained ladies were there, and Gay Byrne made this big hoo-ha and big show and song and dance about giving up the seat, and Marion strutting along the studio floor to take the seat, Gay's seat. And, you know, there was just, they made this big, huge show about Marion, you know, leader, you know, the voice of feminists in Ireland and stuff like this. You know, I know this must have been 30 years ago, even more, you know, because I remember Nell was smoking away on the thing. And it, you know, like, it's clearly, there was clearly some serious misogyny and hatred of colleagues, female colleagues, because he wasn't slapping any of the lads on the arse or calling them names. And for her to say nothing,
well,
it's just it was a complete two fingers to the women that started that movement, that drove that movement in the late 60s and early 70s in Ireland, when married women didn't even have a tax, you know, the tax allowance, you know what I mean? They have to share their husbands, you know. And
well, I think to be fair, I mean, I think even perhaps she'd say it herself that Marion was it was a limited hangout back then, you know, even as a feminist.
No, I know, but to be responsible for it, to be part of, to be a face of that movement at the time, and then to be faced with this Sunday morning, and not to have a remark to make about it. I just thought it was very disappointing, and I know she's probably coming to the end of a very long career. But
I just thought it was entirely predictable. Martin, wouldn't you agree? I mean, listening every Sunday to that is like.
Well, I don't listen to her every Sunday because I don't like the people she has around the tables.
Martin,
it was described recently as on Twitter the keyhole of an upper middle class dinner party. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah. With the odd kind of dub voice or rural voice.
Oh, it's pure tokenism, and it's the same people again and again and again. And it's a very right-leaning voice that comes out of it.
Marcel? Do you know what we're talking about?
I know what you're talking about, but I have to confess, I've never in my life ever listened to it.
Anything.
Marcel, you never listened to Marion, no?
No, I'm not a big radio man.
Like John listens enough for all of us.
Yeah, I listen to it I mean, we listened to, I think on the sheet, we listened to all of the RT Radio 1 shows.
Yeah.
Apart from like Through the Night or whatever.
Yeah.
And then,
although the late debate is very good, although I just like to listen to it. Yeah.
Marcel, do you have any interest in Irish sort of TV or radio?
TV, absolutely. But I get most of my information from Twitter, I'd say, and then links to the RTE player and so on. So we don't have a TV at home, so we don't watch TV at all. Yes, it's mostly online. I do watch the BBC shipping forecast, listen to it every morning, but that's something completely different.
Okay. Yeah. That's like a little trip, isn't it? It's like
I love it.
Martin, are you have you thrown out the TV yet?
A lot, actually. Yeah, actually, but I do listen to radio exactly like you do. There's some stuff I don't listen to. I won't bother listening to Ray. You know, I like the serious programs on RTE. I won't listen to News Talk on principle. I will not go near it on principle.
Yeah. You won't move the dial.
Nope, not to News Talk. I will not give a red cent to them. Not a red cent.
We listened to some of it. Olga, I mean, you can't listen to Paul Williams, but I mean
Yeah. I definitely probably listen more to RTE though, but it's just I don't just cause.
Yeah. And Vanessa, would you be Radio 1?
I listen. I am. I listen to it in the car though. It's always on in the car. One thing I'd say about Radio 1 that I would miss terribly is the way Brian Carty says Slán Tamil after the sports on the radio. You know, the way he just says it, Slán Tamil is lovely. I miss that. And you know, I suppose I listen to it in the car.
I think it is time, actually, just on that point. I think it's time for RTE to have a sports station, because I gotta say, I mean, to listen to on a Monday anyway to any radio, you gotta be really into GAA. And
sorry, John, I missed all that there for some reason. That we were caught in a space-time spasm or something. What was that?
I was saying that it's probably best you didn't hear it. It was just saying that GAA, that on a Monday, if you're not into GAA, you might as well not listen to the radio, because it's just constant.
It's
right in the middle of news programs. Martin, wouldn't you agree with that?
They'd have 20 minutes during the championship on a Monday. That's the
I think RTE is fixated about rugby. I think they're completely fixated about rugby.
And League of Ireland.
Not GAA. I mean, it's just constant. And to me, it's like it just vowels and consonants. It's just
different language.
You know, and they're all laughing, and there's jokes. They've got these in-joke, and it's your man, and it's the guy, and Jesus, you know.
You just don't get it. That's.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm sure you could probably tune into cricket somewhere, John, or
Marcel,
bowling, or fishing, or
Marcel,
sailing.
Do you think that the GA coverage is just a little bit excessive in Ireland?
Like the whole sports coverage is a bit excessive in Ireland, compared to German radio. The few bits and pieces that I listen to, it definitely is. But I have to point out that the documentaries on RT1 on the radio are actually really good. Just while we're talking about sports, but it is really excessive.
Well, I mean, we've got GAA, which is treated not like a sport; it's almost treated like a religion class or something. You know, it's sort of elevated to everything's heroic. You know, you can't just have a regular game on something. It's got to be like.
Well, you see, John, you're saying. Hang on.
Sorry.
Listen, if you're relying on Vincent Hogan now for your taste of the GAA, you're listening to the wrong station. You're listening to a lot of stuff that's inter-county. When, there's very little club level discussed other than strippers on radio. Okay, they'll cover the club finals, but they're rarely televised. The national club final, which is on Paddy's Day, that'll be televised. But the GA starts at the club, and it starts and ends at the club. Because even for the big inter-county players like Galvin, Gooch and you know, the big stars. It's club first. It's club first, and it always will be the club. What you're hearing is the inter-county scene, and it isn't actually the grassroots where GA people like me would respect it and would enjoy it. And naturally, I like to hear, you know, I always call him Turles Rocks, Damien Lawler. You know, he always brings a nice little sideline to the game. I think when he does his 20 minutes with either Tubridy or O'Rourke during the summer.
But they all have their own, like Marty, and it's all kind of. It doesn't feel like a sport. It feels like some kind of. Yeah, I'll admit it's a lifestyle as well. You know, you're into it or you're not, and you're into your club. Just everyone's got an anecdote on a Monday morning about, like, oh, the time that Billy, you know, Joe kicked.
Well, that's just the case. Yeah, but you see, it's all about the talking afterwards, you know, because we win nothing. Like, we win in All Ireland, you win a league, but the fans, it's all about the talk. It's all about the sing-song. It's all about the crack. It's all about the drama. It's all about the fighting. It's all about the seat you got in Turles, and you were stuck with all the Clare crowd, and they were maying out, and they were stinking, and they were full of BO, and all this. You know, it's all part of the scene, you know. You're just not getting it, John.
Well, no. I mean, it just sounds like it just seems, you know, and it goes on forever. Does the season ever end? I mean, is it like?
Well, you have the championship season in the summer, which now seems it never ends because there's no knockouts anymore. Before, once you were knocked out, that was it, and then.
And they start training then a week afterwards. Anyway,
well, they'll be training with their clubs. You see, they'll be back with their clubs. Yeah. So all the county finals have been held now in the last 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. And then they'll go into the provincials. They'll go outside their county, and then they'll go to, you know, the semis, and then whoever ends up in Croke Park on Paddy's Day. That's the biggest. That is the biggest day for the GA person. Is Croke Park, is your club making the All Ireland club final. That is the biggest.
Boy, do we hear that every bloody. Martin, just to close off on the Colgan stuff, that kind of story. I mean, the Irish Times had difficulty, obviously, dealing with the coverage of him, and clearly OT have a problem with dealing with the coverage of Michael Colgan. Do you think it's a justifiable story? Do you think it should be covered? Or do you think?
Yes. No. Every story should be covered. News in Ireland these days has gone to the real news is what's left out, not what's put in. Yeah, I think it's newsworthy. I think legally they have to be probably very careful about naming him. I can understand that. They're a state broadcaster, so they can't step over the line. But there's nothing stopping other people from giving first-hand accounts and naming him. Nothing at all.
Well, I'm surprised one time if somebody didn't get a hold of it all good. Have you heard anything is anybody doing anything on this? Or
I don't know, because I mean, like I genuinely don't know. I think obviously the Sunday Times did a really good job, I thought. On Sunday, the Mail on Sunday, okay, they didn't name him, but at least they covered it to a certain extent. I'm not sure. I suppose, like, once Grace wrote her piece and other people have come forward, it's up to everyone now, you know. I'm not sure where Michael Colgan is or what he said to people or how he's responded, but you know, we definitely contacted the Gate today, and they did release a statement. So they have now set up, you know, an email, and they're appointing, you know, for people to come forward. They've appointed a person, or they're going to appoint a person to deal with it. Story there for everyone to cover.
But you know what that is as well, lads? Do you know what that is? That's them getting all the stories to themselves first and corralling it in.
Consider, yeah. And if there's going to be a kind of a confidentiality clause, or going
out, and I mean, there's one of the stories.
You're hardly going to tell your story back to the Gate.
No, but do you know, like,
somebody did get a cash settlement, isn't that right? A number of years ago.
In 1990s, yeah. But my point is that RTE covered that.
Yeah.
For to happen for them to cover it. I think if the Gate didn't make a statement, they wouldn't touch it. But do you know what I mean?
Yes, of course. How do
Like
they?
it fit into a formula, so it's, you know.
How do they manage the term? How do they? I mean, without naming Calvin.
How do they report it?
I mean, how do they frame?
They basically framed it by saying, I'll just look now, but they basically framed it by saying that the Gate, a week before Grace wrote her, I think it was a week before Grace wrote her piece, or maybe a few days, a couple of theatre organisations came together and released this statement about what was it, kind of issues within the workplace, and saying that they noted developments and allegations in the US, like obviously in regards to Weinstein. So they kind of couched it in that, saying that the Gate Theatre in Dublin, I'm just looking at it now, the Gate Theatre in Dublin has said that any person who has been in their employment or contracted by them who wish to speak to them about any concerns they have in relation to sexual harassment and abuse of power can contact them. The theatre said it intends to appoint an independent professional HR advisor to handle any issues raised. So that's essentially what the statement from the Gate was. So that allowed RTE, I'm sure like the lawyers in RTE were like, okay, now we can report it because they have issued this is a call out to people to contact them if they wish to do so. So we're doing that, but yeah, no, they haven't. But they did mention the fact that a number of other allegations. Oh, sorry. So they talked about the statement that the theatre group, if you like, had this joint statement that was sent out, and then it says that shortly after that, a woman published a blog post in which she made allegations of inappropriate behaviour against a figure in the Irish theatre world. A number of other allegations of inappropriate behaviour were made on social media and widely shared and discussed online. And then it just kind of says last night a further post from another woman came forward. So, you know, they're just couching it in without naming anyone, and just kind of couching it in. We've had Weinstein, we've had these allegations. The theatre community is saying to people that we don't want this kind of this behaviour to be going on, and so
here's the thing. The Sunday Times. Sorry. Here's the thing. The Sunday Times had a very well researched story on Sunday.
Yeah.
There were 3 women. They were entirely credible. They weren't looking for money or anything. You know, there was nothing.
No.
Emotive
and multiple. Sorry to interrupt, but multiple witnesses had said on Twitter, this account of what Grace's account, I completely concur with. I was there. I witnessed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also one of the current directors of the Abbey, I can't remember his name. Sorry, McPartland. Sorry, but he was like, it chimed exactly with what his memory of it. So
yeah,
that's what I was confused by Marion, because I was kind of going, like you said, the Sunday Times was perfectly, was well researched. There didn't seem to be any issue, and if they like, I'm sure Marion has a team of researchers, and there were witnesses there that could be contacted for it to be confirmed. So,
look, I mean, you're not going to get you're not going to get anything out of Marion Finucane or any of these shows. I mean, increasingly you just look at listen to these shows, and you realize that, you're not going to get what you want really out of them. It was so pathetic on Sunday, and Vanessa's right. It was pathetic to listen to. Something about somebody, and she deliberately conflated it with the other, the Harvey Weinstein, the Irish Weinstein, and then Ballybracket, the stripper thing. She conflated it with that. She said, "Oh, there's all sorts of mad stuff on social, mad place in social media, like."
Yeah. I think it's actually
a pre-internet mindset. It's so. I'm weary from it, listening to her.
But it's kind of in denial as well, because all the listeners are there. They know Ethna Shortall and Colin Coyle did a perfectly good, article, excellent article. So there's just no reason to ignore it, other than they chose not to. They chose to.
Guest on the show, and that he's one of their people. If it was Martin, for instance.
And also, if we remember, then was it on Monday? No, Sunday. sorry, Tuesday, on Sean O'Rourke, he was supposed to be on the book club, Michael Colgan, and again, Sean O'Rourke, I think, just said something like, "Oh, Michael Colgan's supposed to be here today, but he won't be joining us." You know, kind of.
Well,
without any context, you know. Kind of.
Just before we get off RTE, Martin, you wanted to praise Philip Boucher-Hayes for the. Martin has done a lot of work on bogus self-employment. He'll explain what that means in a second, but Philip Boucher-Hayes did an item 2 days ago, was it, Martin?
Yeah, on Tuesday, Philip, what I would call, did the ultimate expose on bogus self-employment within RTE, and it has largely gone under the radar. It has, and it's gargantuan in size, what he has exposed in there with bogus self-employment. People are afraid to talk and give their names to him. They'll do it confidentially. I mean, this is the situation he's in. There was a survey done, it only came out yesterday, the day before, about the gender pay gap within RTE. And from what I understand, it didn't include those who are classified as self-employed. So it was a pointless exercise, but it's not getting reported media. This is a general point. Freelancers, or those who call themselves freelancers, have to write a certain way to get their stuff published in publications. And everybody knows what the editorial byline is before they submit a piece. So bogus self-employment is restricting freedom of press. It's restricting alternative voices. It's restricting very good voices in voicing what they really believe. The cost, I mean, journalism, it's a very small circle. As far as bogus self-employment goes, it's small potatoes. But it's very important potatoes in that unless it's reported, nobody's going to pick up on this. Now,
Martin, can you explain a little bit more what you mean? Bogus self-employment. Are you talking about like Joe Duffy has a company that?
No. What I'm talking about, I took 10 cases or brought 10 lads from the construction sector earlier on this year. Through the process, they were automatically classified as self-employed under the ERCT system for construction workers. That's the relevant contract tax system. That's an agreement between the government to classify workers as self-employed, and the worker has no input into this whatsoever.
And they have to set up companies, don't they, basically?
No, not necessarily. They can be sole traders. The social welfare is working hand in hand with revenue on this, and they're helping people set up as self-employed. If you're in the construction sector on ERCT, there is a specific tax band for you. You are allowed to earn 40,000 tax-free when nobody else in the state is. I mean, what's going on here is exactly the same as Apple state aid for businesses and industries that are friendly to the state or are favorable to the state. And the cost is in excess of 80 million in lost PRSI. And that's not lost, it's defrauded PRSI. Bogus self-employment is the biggest social welfare fraud in the state. It costs multiples of claimant fraud. I met with Regina Doherty before the summer. I explained the ins and outs of this, and nobody is doing anything, paying lip service. I've asked specific questions of specific ministers, and they're saying there's a purge now on bogus self-employment, and I've asked them to prove that there is, and they can't.
Martin, you spoke to Regina. But
yes.
you speak to the after.
We spoke for an hour. Regina asked very pertinent, very intelligent questions. She's a clever woman. She knows exactly what this is all about. The 80 million figure comes from ICTU. It's not my figure, that's their figure. Now that's 80 million in social welfare fraud. Where's the outcry of this? Now, the actual figure is far higher. And I know because the 80 million figure ICTU got, they got from an associate of mine called Ken, who got questions asked about it. And we know the figure is far in excess. And the actual figure, when you take all taxes into consideration, is billions.
Really?
Billions.
Really?
Yes. Yes, it is. And it's going on. It's going on a long time, but it was formalized. Bogus self-employment was formalized by the state in 2000. There was a meeting.
So it's Fianna Fáil government then? Fianna Fáil Labour, was it?
It was a Fianna Fáil government. There was a meeting held. Social welfare was there, revenue was there, finance was there, enterprise, trade and employment was there, ICTU, IBEC, NUJ, CWU. And they held this meeting, and basically what they said was that the state will not focus self-employment cases. That no matter what a company says or an industry says, no matter what evidence is presented, the state will side with the company.
Wow.
Can I ask you something, Martin? Just because
Yeah.
you, I don't know whether it was my feed or somebody that just spoke. Are you saying that if there was a case taken against a company if a company was found to have bogus self-employment employees,
Yes.
they're actually employees, but they are actually real employees, but they were treating them as not employees.
Self-employed.
Yeah. But if they're found out, the state wouldn't prosecute or pursue it.
The state will not go after. There are a number of pre-existing what they call local agreements. The ERC.
Okay, well, that effectively is, as you say, it's state aid. It's probably a touch of insider trading, because insider trading is where people take advantage of internal information that's not made to the public. Because insider trading is really wide. You could drag a lot into that.
The consequences for journalism I've explained, in that people have to write to this unofficial editorial line to get their stuff into print. So it's limiting what you hear.
So
in
the
the
writing
construction
to order.
sector, well,
Sorry,
if I want to write,
is
we'll
that
say
like writing to order?
if you want to make money as a journalist, you're going to have to write to what paper wants.
Okay.
To get printed.
Mm. Was it ever thus though?
Staff, proper staff, people who are on payroll have more options, more diversity. There's security in being in a union as a journalist in a proper job where you're paid properly.
Yeah.
You can't be fired for your opinion.
But isn't that
Marcel?
Sorry, Martin, but I think I feel this is like an endemic problem that's not only like for journalists or for broadcasters and so on. Isn't that the same for all the people working for these food delivery companies like Deliveroo or Foodora and
Absolutely.
So on? It's the same, right?
Absolutely. And there was an investigation by a chap up north called Joel Hills, works for ITN. And if you ever get a chance, it's on YouTube. He also wrote about it. It's there. Google it. Joel Hills is his name. And he went undercover in Deliveroo. And he goes through the language they use to ascribe self-employment to their employees. Now, it's the exact same language I have heard at least 16 times across multiple industries. And the language, I broke down the language. I took a case through the state completely agreed with me, and then it was overturned by the Social Welfare Appeals Office in secret with no new evidence. And I spoke to Regina about all of this. I predicted that it would happen again with the 11 construction guys. I wrote about it before we went in. I said, this is going to happen. We've already won the case, thorough investigation, but it's going to be overturned by the Social Welfare Appeals Office because there is this agreement in place that the state will not pursue these cases to the High Court. So the reason they overturn the cases in the Social Welfare Appeals Office is because then the onus is on the worker to take the case to the higher courts and not the state.
Mm.
And if you're basically, it's pricing you out of doing anything about it. There's at least 16 cases across several industries where these pre-existing revenue agreements existed, and all of them have been overturned by the Social Welfare Appeals Office after being upheld by the social welfare itself.
Tell me, so why is RTE so egregious in this?
Well, look, RTE it's in every media. There is a higher percentage of freelancers or self-employed people in journalism than there is in most other industries.
Right. So if I do
40%.
If I contribute to say Morning Ireland, is this what you're talking about? Like the journalist rings in and does an item and they get paid for that?
Yeah, but if we'll say somebody who's more controversial,
yeah,
who's going to give an alternative opinion to the general consensus that goes on RT, are they going to be paid to come in and do it?
Yeah, well, that's the big trick that they've got. They've got and we're now going to go to the Irish Independent correspondent in this particular matter, and of course that's not a neutral, independent. You know,
No. Now, Konstantin Gorbachev did a very nice thread this week, and if anybody's on Twitter, look at it. He explains perfectly that as the fourth estate, mainstream media is losing its power, and that there's a battle going on. So they will constantly decry social media and say social media is this, that, and the other. And it's not that they're losing money; it's that they're losing influence and the power to shape the news.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then you put bogus self-employment on top of that. It's very difficult to get different voices or anything that doesn't agree with the consensus coming through. But the real money that's lost between bogus self-employment is the state itself is the biggest abuser of employment status. It is the biggest abuser. And again, it was on Drive Time this evening, and they were talking about English language teachers. Yeah. Now, they're paid by the state.
Yeah.
They're paid by the state. They work as employees. Another one would be the General Medical Services contract. There are GPs who are self-employed, but there are also GPs who are more likely employees. And when they go and everybody gets free access to a GP, well, then the GP doesn't have any clients of their own anymore. Mm. They work exclusively for the state.
Mm.
And that has an effect on their employment status. Are they in business of their own account when it is the state who decides what they get paid, how many patients they see?
And where they work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote extensively about this one quite a while ago. The GMS elephant, if you have a chance, Google it, it's there. And I put the legals there with it. And they're solid legals.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a massive problem. Leo can go after nominal social welfare claimant fraud. And this is sitting there.
Martin, welfare cheats cheat us all. That's
would you mind? Sorry, guys. Would you mind if I talk about PRSI there for a second, because I mentioned it in the
actually no. Well, go on.
No, go on. You're in charge.
Go on, please.
No, it's well, I suppose I am a sole trader, Martin, anyway, but I was an employee for a long, long time. And PRSI, and I wrote about
Yeah.
this in the budget piece a few weeks ago about employers' PRSI, and I actually think the whole thing needs to be completely taken down and rebuilt, because I don't think the PAYE worker gets good value for their contribution. I mean, and the employer's rate at the moment, it could be up to 12%, as far as I remember. I don't do payroll anymore.
Yeah,
So, what is the employer? It's 10% up to
10.75%, and then it reduces below certain criteria or certain thresholds.
Yeah, what's the threshold up to? Let's say I'm paid 110,000 a year.
Oh God, I couldn't tell you now.
It's circa around the 12%. All right.
Yeah.
So if I'm paid 110,000 a year, I'm paying about 10 grand myself as my employee, my EEPRSI, and my employer is paying about 16,000. So that comes in at around 27,000 a year. Let's just say, would be in my social welfare account. Now, I don't get that value back as a pension contribution or even as maternity leave, you know. And I just think it's really bad. I think we need to look at it myself. And I can see where employers are ducking out of paying.
Okay, and now
I'm not standing up for the employers, but I do firmly believe the whole employers PRSI thing needs to be looked at. It's not the PAYE worker isn't getting. Well, okay, the higher paid PAYE worker, and I think USC is an absolute scandal.
Well, to identify what's going on with PRSI, you have to see exactly what the problem is. And the problem is that there are very good compliant companies out there who are paying exactly what they owe, and there are industries paying exactly what they owe. But then there are other favored industries who aren't paying anything. So their non-compliance is increasing the burden on the PAYE worker and on the genuinely self-employed person.
And the biggest, sorry, come on, Martin.
If you want to tackle the problem, first of all, you have to collect everything that's due. This is huge money. You're talking 80 million a year. Now, and that's conservative. That's a really conservative figure. Now, you fold that into what's being collected from PRSI at the moment, and then you can reduce PRSI right across the board, if that's what you want to do with the extra income. Or you can include the self-employed in proper pensions because you're building up the pension pot. Getting rid of it, or saying that companies have a valid point in saying, oh, it's too high. It's cheaper to hire somebody in Ireland than almost anywhere else in Europe, almost, except for Malta. So when they tell you it's expensive to hire somebody in Ireland, it's not expensive. They're making it.
Yeah, they say that. They say that a lot.
Yeah, they do.
But it's not. It's not the most expensive place.
I mean, IBEC constantly are on about that.
Why do you think the construction sector is in a mess? Why do you think the housing sector is in a mess? The two biggest lobbyists in Ireland, IBEC and the Construction Federation Industry. And people are wondering why there's no houses, why we're entering into another property bubble. For God's sake, these people run government. They run it.
Mm. Yeah, it's glum, isn't it?
Well, they're the ones benefiting from bogus self-employment too. The construction network, is making a fortune, and it's closing the door. It's giving an unfair advantage to new competition. So the guy who wants to start off and be legit and have his 3 or 4 gangers working with him and out doing a job, he's at a disadvantage to the large employer who's getting away with calling them all self-employed. He's going onto sites, and there was JIU investigations over the last couple of months, and that's on back of me pushing this issue constantly. They went onto sites.
Is that a waste of revenue manpower if they're not going to prosecute anyway?
But I asked the question, Pascal read out these numbers, and these numbers are ridiculous. There was 200 people reassigned as employees, 200 out of the number of people on the ERCT system. It's nothing. Now, the pertinent question is, how many were referred to the scope section of the Department of Social Welfare for assessment of insurability of employment? And I can tell you the answer because I was in there in January, and the answer is zero. So for all their guff, they're not referring any cases that could possibly overturn the ERCT.
And Regina is obviously aware of all this, and that's her policy now, is it?
Well, Regina has said that she'll come back to me at the end of the summer. Now, look, I'll wait till Christmas and we'll see what happens. But I fire ahead on all of this stuff, and a couple of journalists have really moved on it. Boucher Hayes is doing incredible work. Mick Clifford has written about it, and he was praised by a lecturer for showing some real journalism for a change.
And Martin, you've done great pieces for us, haven't you?
It's one of the topics. I've been on it for 18 years. I wrote a book about it. I predicted exactly where we would be now. I predicted what was going to happen. They're talking about a shortfall in income tax at the present moment in time. Now, that shortfall in income tax is bogus self-employment.
Because, sorry, just stop you there, just to it's the one thing I kind of understand. It's because there's more people employed, but the take is less because of this, because a lot of them are self-employed.
It's not being deducted. It's not being deducted by the employer and sent in every month. This is the 13th or the 14th. I forget. It's years since I did an employer's return. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell.
No, but PAYE would be sent in every month. The following month, the P30 would go in every month. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt Martin's flow, but the P30 would go in by the employer every month. So they would have been getting the PAYE income into the exchequer every month, and PRSI and employers PRSI, that's actually one of the big areas I have a problem with, employers PRSI, but I'll go back to that. So, but if you're self-employed, sure, I don't have to pay this year's tax till next October. 12 months. Do you know what I mean? So, and of course I could figure it out, but I can't because I've stopped so much withholding tax. So, but just if you don't mind if I backtrack a bit there, Martin and everyone, a small business, small firm would send in their P30 every month, and the employer has paid the employer's PRSI on salaries. But that they may have a cash flow thing. They may only get kind of income at certain parts of the year. Let's just say it's a Christmas cracker company, so they're in production all the way up till October, November. They may not get paid. The banks, they'll be living in overdrafts, until their windfall comes in at Christmas, or a jewelry company, or anything that's cyclical or seasonal. And the employer is paying the PRSI on income, and he's going into his overdraft or her overdraft or the business's overdraft all the time. And I always feel that was very unfair on small businesses.
As I've said, we're the second or third cheapest within the EU to hire somebody. So if your business model is based upon tax evasion smoke screens and calling people bogus self-employed, well, then you don't have a viable business model.
Martin, so you've raised this, right? They're aware of this situation.
The state is 100% aware of this. There is no doubt about this. They're 100% aware.
And they're allowing it to continue.
Oh, not just allowing it. If you consider the ERCT system or the GMS contract or the English language teachers, they're not just allowing it. They are facilitating and setting up the systems so that it can happen.
Amazing. Marcel, any thoughts? Marcel?
Yeah, I'm thinking, and it's really interesting to hear all the inner workings of that and how much the state supports it. But I think this is part of the whole thing we've seen globally, especially as this is what I was asking for, Deliveroo and Foodora, and I think all these taxi services like Uber and so on, they treat people are basically employees. They are bogus self-employed people from the get-go, because that's the whole concept, because all these people coming from Silicon Valley, or the companies coming from Silicon Valley, market themselves as service providers, whatever that is, so they're not liable to become proper employers. And I think this is not only limited to Ireland. I think this is something in the whole of Europe and globally. We'll see more of these things coming. And I think it's really important for people to be aware of, the pitfalls that all these things entail. So well done, Martin, I have to say. Really.
Martin, I mean, most journalists would be kind of self-employed, wouldn't they?
There are a lot of journalists who are self-employed, but consider that the Journalist of the Year last year is an employee, and it was Mick Clifford, and he was able to write about An Garda Síochána in a way that other journalists had to be careful, because of where they worked, because of the fact that they were freelancers. He had the security within his employment to take on an organization like An Garda Síochána.
Yeah. Well, obviously the freelancer is much more vulnerable and
hugely vulnerable. I don't see Fine Gael doing anything about it. It did start, actually, all of this began back with the Rainbow Coalition. That's where the original concept of
mid-90s.
Yeah, mid-90s. That's where this all really kicked off. And I've traced it all the way back. I've followed it all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you were to pick a point where this started, it started with share fishermen. And if anybody knows anything about the fishing industry at the moment, share fishermen is akin to slavery, what's going on there at the moment. We get the odd article bubbling up about some guy who's been on a boat for 7 months, living in squalor, not getting paid. But this was all very predictable.
Yeah. Marcel, you're going to leave us, were you?
I have to drop off, yeah. Thanks very much, everyone.
Marcel, thank you so much.
See you next week.
Bye, Marcel. Tell us, how did you put up the message before you go?
You click on the little blue thing in the top left corner.
I don't have a little blue thing. Where the I see it, yeah.
There you go.
I'll send you a message now.
These are the inner workings of Portugal on the telly.
Marcel, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see
you Marcel.
after that or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
See you, Marcel. Actually, we may be joined by Shayna or Johnny and Neil. Neil is
brilliant.
Child has colic.
I know. I feel like that myself.
Neil's Sadie has colic, so Neil has been dealing with the colic situation, but may join us at some later point. And Johnny Keenan as well. He has just emailed me and said that he won't be. I can't make it tonight. So half an hour into the show, fair enough. Not flaky at all. Anyway, I'll get. I was just wondering if we can go through tomorrow's newspaper.
Yeah, we have the Examiner. But one question, sorry, I was just going to ask Martin, what's the name of your book? Just because people might want to.
It's a self-published book. It's on my website, ramshornrepublic.com. As in crooked as a ram's.
Okay, I think we actually did a post it, but just thought there people might want to read it. So, sorry, we only have the Examiner, the only Irish story, the only Irish paper we have. So, speaking of the lobbying groups, there are calls to this. The main story in the Examiner is that there's calls to. Can you guys see that? Yeah.
Yep.
To have a new SSIA fund type thing.
I can talk about that actually, guys. Okay. In a sec when you're done.
Cool. Brilliant. So basically, the story there, Juna McEnroe, Housing Finance Agency says first-time buyers must be helped. So basically, these agencies saying that the government should consider funding an SSIA type mortgage savings scheme. Housing Finance Agency Chair Michelle Norris said other European countries have successfully used such special top-up saving schemes to fund private and public housing needs. So that's that. There by Noel Baker in the middle, donate water refunds to homeless. Three of the country's charities are launching a major appeal asking for householders to donate some or all of their Irish water refunds to help those who are homeless.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think actually Vincent O'Toole said something like this in a column in the summer. I think he said, look, I don't want mine. He paid for it. He said, yeah, he paid for his water charges. He doesn't want the check back because it's just a kind of symbol of Egyptry or something. So I think he made some sort of call that it should go to homeless. But so I think it's Focus Ireland, the three charities anyway, are Focus Ireland, Simon Community and the Peter McVerry Trust have joined forces to establish the Refund Project. So that's what it's called, aimed at diverting the water charges refunds to tackle the housing crisis. So
and those people,
that might start a debate about funding and homelessness.
People
we're funded, yeah. Sorry?
Little people there?
Oh, little people, yeah. So Amy Tyrrell from Limerick and Conor Hall from Tralee, their graduation at IT Tralee. So yeah, I'm not too sure what the crack is there, but yeah,
Okay.
big chair. Perhaps that's why. So the story in the right, Examiner journalists lauded for analysis of Grace scandal by Stephen Rogers. So the two journalists were Daniel McConnell and Fia Crowconnor. So the journalism awards are on tonight, which is possibly why we don't have any other Irish papers, because there's probably.
Oh, there was on this afternoon, but yeah.
Yeah, it was on this afternoon. Yeah. So
Catherine Corliss won an award, a special award for research journalism of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
work on tune.
Yeah, the Irish Times did very well in the awards rather as well. I think. Sorry, I'm just kind of thinking of the list of people who did very well or who got awards.
Did you win anything, guys?
No, we never got. We're not.
You also have to, but you also have to enter. You have to enter the awards.
Oh, you have to pay an entry fee, I suppose, and buy a seat at the dinner table.
Well, the judges.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but
in all the paper. I mean, the judges are literally made up of journalists from those papers, people associated with those papers. It seems very odd.
Setup, yeah.
The judging panel. But
I mean, ideally, it should be. I don't know who would make up the panel, but it would be a case of there would be no entries, and it would just be decided upon. But that would entail people having to read news, every day, and I'm not sure how many people out there.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the award to Catherine Corliss is interesting because she's not a journalist, and the citizen journalist.
She did their work for them.
Well, I think I mean, I don't want to add to the misery that legacy media is experiencing, but it really is. It's the last chance saloon now, I think, for media around the world. Really, the old media is. I certainly don't trust it anymore. Martin, are you?
Well, I don't.
Well,
I mean, I tend to look for multiple opinions on a subject and then decide for myself what's the way to go.
But it took you 18 years, did it, Martin, to get anyone to listen to you?
I've never stopped. I take cases for other people. I help them. It's never stopped. It's just a brick wall until I tried Joan Burton when she was Minister for Social Welfare. Employment state is entirely a social welfare responsibility, nothing to do with revenue whatsoever. Wasted time going to revenue about it. Official line, the unofficial process is revenue decides and social welfare agrees with whatever revenue tells them. That's the unofficial line.
That makes sense.
Sorry?
That makes a lot of sense, that they would follow what revenue say, or the revenue.
Now, there's a very good section within the Department of Social Welfare called the Scope section, And for want of a better word, it's a group of eggheads, no more than 10, very well versed on the law and precedent on whether you're an employee or self-employed. I would say their decisions are, well, I know their decisions have survived all the way to the Supreme Court several times. But then there's another office of the Department of Social Welfare called the Social Welfare Appeals Office. And it was originally called independent, but it's not independent, and that's been long established. Department of Social Welfare, that's basically overturning decisions it doesn't like without any new evidence, and that's what's going on. The fact that it's a secret court, and a very, very powerful secret court, multi-billion euro decisions, and there's no public scrutiny whatsoever, none whatsoever. I've probably been in there more than anybody else, any other individual. And I've seen how it works, and it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful.
Gosh.
Well, we're going to get something done on this, Martin. I think you're going to get.
I don't have a whole lot of faith, because we'll say, for instance, a GP that's been working for 10 years and was misclassified as self-employed and then proves that they're an employee, then the state is liable for all back payments for that person for 10 years. Now multiply that by hundreds of thousands of people over 20, 30 years, and the state is never going to give on this.
No.
There has to be a compromise somewhere where we say, okay, draw the line here and let's move forward. Everybody's going to be above board from here on in. And look at the money that will be, extra money that will be coming into the exchequer. It'll solve. There is no pension crisis. It's a complete farce.
The time bomb is a myth.
The problem is an enforcement of regulations or an enforcement of tax collection. It's disguised as a pension problem. Collect what's owed, and then you have no problem. But what you have is you have revenue, social welfare, Gardaí on these expensive photo opportunities where they're standing, you know, checking fellas in vans. Are you working and claiming?
Yeah.
And there are guys working and claiming. They are working and claiming because if they go off the social welfare to be self-employed, on again. They're no longer a statistic. They don't appear as unemployed when they're out of work. That's why builders left the country quicker and faster and went more than anybody else, because they had no choice. There was no safety net for them. They had to run. Instead of doing that, I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the apples on the ground. Go after the big guys who are paying and who are facilitating this system. And I mean the really big guys. Stop picking up that you can walk onto a site and say, oh yeah, well, you're certainly working and claiming, so we've got you. Lawyers that are doing it for thousands of employees.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the early, the mid-90s, the black economy, now they tell you it's a grey area, but it's not a grey area. The vast majority of decisions, bread and butter decisions for the scope section, there's no real problem deciding. There are a small number of cases that are far more difficult, where there may be family relationships involved, and these are difficult cases, but there are a tiny number of cases. The vast majority are really easy to solve. And I've been in a room with the barristers for the state where they've argued this, and I've listened to I have all their legal arguments. And there's no doubt the legal representatives for the Department of Social Welfare have no doubt that these systems are making people bogus self-employed. And they've no doubt, they've given their legal opinions, they've given them in writing. Yeah. And yet they're overturned by a social welfare appeals office where the state is not at all legally represented. It's crazy stuff. It's
the job is done already.
Insane.
Sorry, just to Martin, this is ideological or what? I mean, what is it?
It's how do you create jobs? Well, you have to give some people breaks to create jobs. That's one part of it. The other part of it is if you're self-employed and you suddenly find yourself out of work, you have no entitlement to job seekers. Therefore, you won't appear on an unemployment list. You don't exist.
Sorry, do you mean the live register? If I have to sign on in the morning, I don't appear on the live register.
That's true. You have no entitlement. You weren't paying PRSI. You're on your own. Now,
I know that, yeah. But do you know what though? Leo said he put a lovely video out. I can now get my eyes tested.
Okay, so what?
I thought you got free eye tests anyway, don't you? If I spectate something.
Oh no! If you're self-employed, you didn't, but now you do, and we get something else now as well.
Teeth cleaning.
What is it? I get teeth.
The difference.
I get my teeth cleaned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once a year. Do you know though? One thing I would say about
Anyway, go on.
One thing I would say about social welfare, though, it affects every single one of us. At some point, whether it's children's allowance or maternity benefit or pensions or sick benefit, or it does affect, and I do think it does. Martin, what you've done and how you aren't being treated like Catherine Corliss down there getting prizes from the Bar Council. And the reason why I don't want it to come across that I'm patronising or anything like that is I've been an accountant a long time. I was a financial accountant, and doing payroll and doing the P30s and years ago, before payroll was automated, we used to have these cards and we used to have these desk things, and you'd work out which class somebody was, PRSI. It was and the thing is, if they were actually to write down the code for PRSI, they actually couldn't be able to complete it because it's so complicated and it's so old, and they kept adding to it and they kept changing it. Like hospital consultants have their own PRSI class.
Yes.
And now with the new contracts, they now have the same class as the rest of us had for years, And I think apprentices used to have their own class as well. And if there were apprentices 1 year in or 1 year and 8 months in, they had another class, and there was the percentages you had to deduct, like were to like 6 decimal places and stuff like that. And so I've always said that about PRSI, that there is actually no one big tax manual to explain and completely break it out into all the different payments, classes, what you get. And I've said this as well about revenue, is that I don't think there's anyone in there that could do it either. It's just so ancient and so historic and so tinkered with and added to and fucked around with for years, excuse me, John, for years and years and years. It's just this massive cash cow for the state that they don't even have to look for. The employers send it into them. It's like the last property bubble with stamp duty. They didn't open their trap about stamp duty because it just flooded in and they didn't have to go looking for it. Solicitors collected it and sent it in, It's just money that pours in that they don't really have to kind of go to get credit controllers to ring the finance department and saying, where's your P30 this month,
Okay, hold just 1 second on that. And this is just an example that you just reminded me of, and this is really important. The year after the construction industry collapsed, that's the first year it collapsed. I think it was 2008.
Yeah.
The ERCT system had a revenue figure of minus 93 million.
Oh, the rebate's gone back.
Money to the tune of minus 93 million. It was somewhere, I think, off the top of my head, in and around the 60 million figure. Collecting money. What the ERCT system is doing, a huge financial loss. And the years where there was nobody really working in it, when it was at zero, you were able to see what the loss. There was as much people employed in construction as there was self-employed in construction, very close on the figures. The year after, or the first year of the crash, the employees in the construction industry contributed, now again, it's close to this figure, close to 2 billion. For self-employed, contributed minus 93 million. So when I tell you there's huge losses, minus 93.
Yeah.
There's huge losses in here. There are massive losses in here. Massive.
So are the self-employed people paying any tax at all?
Excuse me, I pay tax on income I haven't earned yet.
I remember, God bless him, Con Houlihan, I remember meeting him and he, the taxman like $1 million or something. It was like, and he was,
was he never an employee?
Well, he never ever paid tax. He was self-employed. He was technically self-employed.
Oh, right. He was self-employed, yeah.
Like everybody, I guess. I mean, it was self-assessment or whatever, you know. But he owed like a phenomenal amount of money. I may be exaggerating, money, but I mean, it was like silly money, you know.
Well, I have to have a tax certificate, so.
Remember the guys went on the crane for the protest. You remember this going back a while? Oh, yes. Guys,
of course. Yeah.
Well, those guys weren't fighting for to be tax-free. What they were fighting, and this is what's going on, is there are agreements within the construction industry that get paid certain money, and these are long-fought agreements that are fought over 30, 40, 50 years. And to get around these agreements, the developers are calling these guys self-employed. Therefore, the agreements don't apply. Therefore, the guys aren't getting paid what they should be getting paid. Lots of them aren't even making a decent wage, a decent week's wage. And I'm talking about, this is proper blue-class workers who are getting entirely screwed over. If they get injured on the job, they have nobody to go after. They have no recompense. Yeah. They're not entitled to anything. I mean, this is fundamental stuff.
Yeah. I mean, journalism is one thing, but when you're on a building site, you're, you know, pretty dangerous.
The delivery drivers, couriers. I was the seminal test case for couriers, for motorcycle couriers, push bike couriers. I myself was.
Really good.
And I proved exactly what I was saying, every single piece of it. And then it was overturned by the Social Welfare Appeals Office because they felt like it. Simply because they felt like it.
Wow.
And that was despite the state having a barrister in there saying, no, you can't.
Wow.
You can't. This man is 100% right. You can't overturn the decision. And they still overturned it. Now, this is a civil servant appointed by the minister who is overturning another civil servant appointed by the minister.
And
one of these offices is wrong, and one of them is costing the state a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Now, there must be some way of saying which one of them is wrong. Now, I know which one of them is wrong. I know, because I've been in it so many times.
Yeah. Well,
I know which one.
Well, Martin, I want to thank you very much. You kind of opened my eyes.
It's an incredible body of work that you've done, because I know what this whole PRSI and the argument and how you prove somebody is a sole trader or a provider, a supplier, or an employee. You know, so I've studied it. I've worked within it for a long time, and
well, if you've studied it, you know the guidelines. You know the little booklet, the guidelines.
Yeah, oh, I do. Yeah,
guidelines, the actual guidelines that they use at the moment.
Yeah.
Those guidelines were issued because of the furor I created, and those guidelines are pish. They're absolute nonsense. Nonsense. They wouldn't even stand up in a courtroom.
Martin, we're we'll revisit this. And
Well, I think we should, John, because PRSI does or not PRSI, sorry, social welfare.
Yeah,
we all have a stake in it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That would lead. That
the
would.
idea
The
that
next
there's these courts in camera between two civil servants.
No, it's
you know,
it's definitely worth visiting. Martin, thanks. Sorry, you were going to say something there, Martin.
Yeah, if you're going to revisit this, don't revisit it without doing the public services card as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. In fact, actually, Olga, the Times Irish edition is there.
It is, yeah. 2 seconds.
I just want to say that we were talking about kind of things that are falling apart and clunky and being added onto. We had our tech guy, Stuart, had a look at the site. Went in there last week to do an overhaul, and he said he'd never seen anything like it. The site was
nightmare.
We'd added to things over the years.
Was that all the cursing on it, John?
No, it was like just millions. It had been patched together over the years, sort of ad hoc, and he's doing an overhaul now. So if there's huge problems on the site, technically, but they're going to be sorted out. That's what I just wanted to say. I mean, they're in the process of being sorted out. So over to you, Olga.
Okay. Well, the lead story. So I'll go for the top. At the top there, Catalan leader faces arrest as 8 of his ministers are jailed. So, Spanish judge was poised last night to issue an arrest warrant for Catalonia's sacked president after 8 of his ministers were put behind bars and faced charges of rebellion. So I think they were in court yesterday, but obviously he is in Brussels with I think 4 of his ministers. So those who did turn up, bar 1, I think, have been put in jail. But I think they're going to arrest this EU arrest warrant for them for the other 4. So
that's a great.
Jedward there. Yeah, Jedward. I saw this earlier, and someone next to me was saying that it looks like they've just kind of recruited another Jedward. That's his barrister. Okay, their barrister, Desmond Murphy. So they had a case. They had this Limerick businessman took them.
Sorry, I'm laughing.
His wig kind of a Jedwardian.
Sorry, John.
His wig gives
very Jedwardian. Yeah. So anyway, basically there was a case. This businessman was there was a problem over a merchandise deal, but anyway they've settled anyway. So it's a very kind of disturbing, sad story there at the bottom by Ellen Coyne and Aaron Rogan. Private IVF clinics offer discredited €1,000 tests. So it seems like clinics are giving couples 1,000 or possibly single women blood tests, €1,000 blood tests, despite experts warning that there is no proof that the procedure improves the chances of having a baby. The test is sold by Beacon Care and Sims fertility clinics. It is part of a reproductive immunology procedure offered to women who have had multiple miscarriages after rounds of IVF. Both Beacon Care and Sims, 2 of the biggest private fertility clinics in the country, offer immunology testing and treatment for natural killer cells.
Yeah.
But yeah, it costs $1,000. So
Chicago test is called.
They're taking advantage of desperate girls. They really are.
The Catalan situation. Martin, do you have any thoughts on what's happening there?
Well, yeah, actually, where Catalan is concerned, my bugbear about this at the moment, one of many, is that the Department of Foreign Affairs has come out and said that Ireland supports Spain.
Yeah.
With our history, it would have been better to say nothing. In supporting Spain, this is going to get bloody. It looks very much like it's going to get bloody. And I asked the question, Fine Gael have backed themselves into a corner on this one. It's only a matter of time until there's protests in Dublin. It's only a matter of time until they're being forced to back down on that position. And it's an arrogance that's in Fine Gael. They should have held their wish and said, we'll say nothing until we see how the wind blows on this one.
Well, when have Fine Gael ever done anything that the EU hadn't, approved?
This one in particular, considering our history. We don't like to see people who are peaceful, democratically elected. We don't like to see them locked up for seeking independence. That goes against everything it is. Everything we enjoy in this country comes from that. Possibly support what is an imperialist nation like Spain has always been against the small autonomous group that wants to declare autonomy and has had a vote on it. How can you then say we agree with locking up these people?
Well, I mean, going back, the Blue Shirts fought on the Franco's side. I mean, there's a tradition in Ireland as well of that type of support.
Yeah, but have we not moved on?
No.
Have we not moved on?
I don't think they have.
Is it just simply the sons and daughters of Fine Gael that took the boat over there? Is it their sons and daughters that are now running the country?
Yeah.
Or is there something more to Fine Gael?
No, that is pretty much how it is. It's the sons and daughters of these people. Yeah, indeed.
A minority government with a minority leader speaking for all of Ireland. I wasn't asked, I'm sure, of the four people here, none of you were asked an opinion. So where do we say that we automatically row in behind Spain? Where does that come from?
Very good question. On that bombshell, sorry, Olga, did you?
No, I'm just guessing they're kind of going with the EU line, I guess. That's where Leo, I'm presuming, is taking his,
Yeah, well, I can understand that, but we're Irish.
Not saying that that's good, but by the way, just saying that. Presume.
Yeah, I mean, Martin, we totally agree. I mean, there's no disputing it. I think we're going to have to leave it there.
Can I just go back to the Examiner story there with the SSIAs, guys?
Sure. Yeah.
No problem.
If you got it up there, that was my idea.
Oh.
Yeah, at the Fianna Fáil budget breakfast, I promoted. I was asking them about the dirt tax in the budget. If you remember, a few weeks ago, I was at an event, and the various bodies that were there, I spoke, and was asking about the dirt tax in the budget, and it didn't change. And I mentioned it about first-time buyers needing a larger deposit now under the central bank rules, and the state are taking dirt off their savings to save for the first-time buyers, to save for their deposit. So I suggested about having an account in National Treasury that didn't attract dirt tax, or at least even adjust the dirt tax down, because the bigger the deposit somebody has, the more the less likely their mortgage may collapse into unsustainability at some point in the future. So it would encourage them to save rather than having them save and then take dirt tax off it. So I had suggested that maybe National Treasury could come up with a fund or a saving scheme like that, and they said, that's very good, Vanessa, we'll take that back.
And that's it. Oh my God, that's incredible, isn't it?
Well, I just think it was wrong collecting dirt tax off. If there's first-time buyers are saving for a deposit for the house, and the money's in the main street banks who we know, and it was just unfair to take dirt tax off it, and they didn't change dirt tax in the. Even if it was a particular type of account, at least knock it down to 1% to help people save for a deposit. So I'd suggested having a savings account separate for our first-time buyers, and encourage you to get as big as they can, because the bigger the deposit, the more sustainable the mortgage will be.
Thanks,
if they were really serious about it, and that's what I said. So Mr. Calleary said, Vanessa, that was very good. Definitely take that back.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much.
So I'm saying it's my idea.
Brilliant.
It's
brilliant.
the Vanessa Ford savings fund.
Fantastic. I don't even understand any of it, but it sounds fantastic.
Thanks, John. Thanks a million.
I do. No, I do understand. A couple of things. Martin and Tony Groves do a brilliant podcast called The Echo Chamber. Martin, where can that be found?
we'll be on what is it, iTunes tomorrow, but it's on SoundCloud. The first four are on SoundCloud. We have Izzy Kamikaze with us tomorrow. So she has, this is it's probably going to be a little different. We take a different angle on news stories. We rather than anything else we see. It's quite popular.
Yeah.
We're shaking a few trays. We're causing a few problems. So we really enjoy it.
I have to say,
we enjoy it.
It's a really, really good listen. Like, everybody goes on.
We want it fast paced. We want it as we would discuss politics, not as Marion would discuss politics.
Yeah. And you had Erica Fleming on with.
We had Erica last week. She was a great guest, and I know Erica, so she was a fabulous guest. And Erica has set the bar for all other guests.
Yeah.
In that it shows what we're at. We want everybody's opinion, but we also want more than what your issue is. We don't really.
Yeah.
We want to know about you.
Yeah. Well, it's a really good show. I like that you're like Bodger and myself, a bit of conspiracy theorist, and
well, yeah, I am. I mean, I've had a look inside what goes on in this country.
Martin, can I ask you a question? If you're a conspiracy, come here, was Bob Marley assassinated? Was that a secret plot? Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. So we're going to fill in the CIA assassination of Bob Marley with Vanessa after the show. But speaking of Bob Marley, there's no Johnny Keenan tonight. I hope he's okay. Shane O'Neill never showed up. Neil Curran is with Sadie, who has colic. But I want to thank Marcel Kruger, who joined us earlier from Dundalk. A special thank you to Martin McMahon, and listen to him on the Echo Chamber and also Ramshorn Republic. And we'll put details of his book, Martin's book, in the description maybe tomorrow. So, and in the post about the show. Olga Cronin from The Sheet, and thank you very much. And Vanessa Foran, the inventor of the SSSI.
Well, if you ran the budget show, I would have told you about it and how gave me all the names of the people who were there, so we would have had it.
Okay, and thank you for myself, John Preposterous Ryan. We'll see you all, hopefully on the site tomorrow, and if not, maybe here next Thursday at 10 p.m. Thank you very much. Namaste. Thank you. Awkward silence now.